everyone, and welcome back to another video. My name is Jenna Van Mourik, and this is my office. So if you've been following my channel for a long period of time, then you're probably wondering either one of two things: who is this woman? Or, wow, you've been gone a really long time. What have you been doing? Well, that is a great question, and I would love to tell you. Let's get into it. If you're new here, I am a reader, reviewer, and also author of biblical historical fiction, or ancient historical Christian fiction that is set during biblical times or around the biblical period. I wrote these 4 beautiful books. The first one is Jerusalem's Daughter, followed by Antioch's Daughter, Daughter of the Most High, and my most recent book, which is a Christmas novella, is Bethlehem's Daughter. It is this beautiful, beautiful blue cover that I absolutely adore with a star on the front. And this one is probably just my favorite one that I've ever done. Also, it says Experience the Nativity, has the blurb on the back. All 4 of my books are also available in special edition hardcovers that have more of a classic old book feel and vibe to them. And I have also designed all of these myself as well, which is really fun. And each hardcover in the design, to me, there's something special about each one because it's taken from moments in the book or in the story, and it's usually like an important element. For instance, Jerusalem's Daughter takes place around Palm Sunday and during the Passion Week, so the hardcover for that has this lovely botanical design. I'm currently working on a new series that is a spin-off of that series, so that was Generations of Faith, and I'm working on a new series that will focus on the Jerusalem church and the lead up to the fall of Jerusalem. So between the end of Acts and then about like 70 AD. But while I'm working on that series and drafting it and editing it and just getting ready to start promoting and publishing something entirely new, I am not quite ready to say goodbye to the old. If you saw my Instagram today, then you probably saw that I am publishing a special edition collector's set, or an omnibus set. So if you don't know what an omnibus is, because it sounds really weird, an omnibus is both a giant bus, and also in the bookish world, an omnibus is basically a term used to describe multiple books in one single volume. So you have probably seen an omnibus, whether you've realized it or not, if you have ever gone to Barnes & Noble and bought one of their like fancy decorative hardcover classics that are usually like the complete works of Shakespeare or every book by Jane Austen ever. Or if you have ever bought like this collection of books by Julie Clausen. It is 3 novels in one, and it is almost as wide as my head. Or if you've ever seen, like, if you're a biblical fiction fan, the Lineage of Grace series by Francine Rivers. She did this for both A Lineage of Grace and Sons of Encouragement, but those were originally published as individual novellas, and then those novellas were later taken and published in one bind up. And this is probably what I'm going to be comparing and talking about and referencing a lot throughout this video. But as you can see, this is the size of a typical book. Most books, in my experience, are about 5.5 by 8.5 inches, but it would seem that collections and omnibuses tend to be more closer to 6 by 9, and they're a little bit thicker because they are including multiple books in one volume. So let's go back to the beginning and allow me to explain to you why I'm publishing an omnibus, because it may seem a bit out of the blue, and I'd love to get into it for you. So I have worked at multiple different bookstores in my life before I became a full-time writer. Something I would notice is that when people would come into the bookstores, they would often ask if we had specifically any novella collections or omnibus books or collection books, because they were traveling and it was easier to travel with like one big book that had multiple books inside of it than maybe necessarily packing a lot of books. And that was interesting to me because I have never thought that way personally. I will absolutely pack 5 or 6 books for a single trip and then read none of them. And I don't typically buy collections unless it's like the Francine Rivers collection and it's really, really pretty and I want to have it. Or for instance, probably already saw me pull up the Lineage of Grace collection, but did you know she also made it in hardcover? And because I'm a collector, I had to have both because I like to have every edition of everything ever. I don't typically buy collections unless it's for that reason, or I'm a really big fan of the author, or if it's a really great deal. But I don't seek out collections. And I was always very interested by this specific category of people that would come in and specifically ask for a collection. And so with that in mind, that's been kind of on the back burner of my brain for a while now. And I had kind of been thinking someday that would be really cool to do, to publish a collection so that I could meet that niche market. And this probably isn't applicable to everyone, but I am always looking for ways to make my books special. For instance, that is why I have always published the paperback and the hardcover together, because the paperback is just the book, and that's usually the format most people like to read in, but my hardcovers always come with exclusive bonus content like illustrations, and my favorite part, which is actually a bonus Bible study and reading plan in the back of the book with coordinated days and assigned readings to go through the entire book with scripture at the same time and then have space to journal in. Plus, some people buy the hardcovers that wouldn't buy the paperbacks just because they like that edition better. They prefer the feeling of hardcover. They want the exclusive bonus content, or maybe they just like the look of it better. I would have a hard time choosing. If I was shopping personally, I would buy both. So there's always good reasons to have multiple editions of your book out there. I don't really think it's any different than having a Kindle or a paperback or, like a physical edition or an e-reader edition. They just reach different markets. So I had those two things going on in my mind. And then the third thing that was the final thing that kind of made me like jump over the edge, take the proverbial dive into the deep end of the publishing sea, if you will, is that I am currently working on that new series that I mentioned. And I had talked to my good friend Audrey, who I host a writing podcast with her, where we give Christian writing advice and also just chat about our experiences with writing from a Christian perspective. And I was chatting with her basically about how I was putting so much effort into this series, but it was going to take a bit to get it off the ground because it's been a long time since I've drafted a whole new series. I started publishing Jerusalem's Daughter 5 years ago, and I've been writing in that world ever since. So I'm kind of almost in a sense starting completely from scratch. And so I had mentioned to her that I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to publish something this year. My next book, my previous book came out at the end of 2025. I don't think I'll be able to publish in 2026 because I'll probably be just preparing to publish the new series in early 2027, Lord willing. And I was like, it's kind of sad. Like it'll be my first year in a number of years to not have something new to release to the public. And she had said, well, you could always do a special edition collection in honor of the 5th year anniversary of Jerusalem's Daughter. And I was like, okay, let me throw this together in like a month. So there are a lot more YouTube videos and tutorials, and I'm sure articles about how to do this. So this isn't necessarily going to be a how-to or a tutorial video as much as it will be just here's what I did. So obviously I'd already written the books, so I didn't have to do any writing as far as that was concerned, but I did have to figure out what it was going to look like. And once again, a part of this is also hoping to reach new audiences. So Generations of Faith, the series, will be basically its own book with its own distinct cover and its own like kind of identity to it. And it'll be all of those same books just wrapped up in a different package. And so my hope is that with the new cover, with the new title, so to speak, it will actually reach readers and audiences that it didn't previously reach, or maybe reach people that specifically look for collections, or it'll just spark some new interest. So that is my goal. So let's talk about the cover design process. The first thing that I did was basically I just started looking for stock photos and stock images and things that, felt like they could kind of fit the vibe. So this series is an early church saga of one family and their journey from the very beginning of the church up until around the time of Paul's missionary journeys to Philippi. And so it's just this one family witnessing all of these great events. And so I started trying to think, okay, how can I summarize and encapsulate all of those things, all of these characters, this whole saga in just a couple of stock images? And you really can't, but I think I got pretty close and I very much nailed it. So these are the 2 stock images that I found. And I was like, okay, these will be perfect. Let me download them and play with them because I had a couple of other backup options and ideas of things, like maybe just, an image of, I kind of had tossed around the idea of just an image of a thing, like an object-based cover. but I really wanted something that felt a bit cinematic in nature, if you will. So I was going to try these first. And I originally just did very simply layered the pictures on top of each other, put the text in the middle. That is another thing that was a very specific decision. You can see on my previous books, they are very text heavy. The cover design itself is a big block at the bottom for the text being the title and my name, and then a smaller image at the top with a smaller image on the back. And so I really wanted this to be more image heavy, make the image more the center and the text kind of the accent in the middle. And I was like, okay, I don't know if that necessarily works. Obviously, very, very rough draft. And I just had stacked the images together, put the text on, and I called it good. But obviously, it doesn't quite look finished. So then I tried again. And I was like, maybe I can't use both images. Maybe it should just be one. And I rearranged it, reoriented it. And then I put a little, this'll come in handy later, but I put a little text at the top that said, insert bookish marketing review quote thing here. Sometimes when you are publishing a book, you will ask other authors for an endorsement, which is basically a short block of text that will go at the top and kind of maybe grab a reader's attention. So I was already kind of thinking like, okay, this image has a big white space at the top. Maybe that would be a good spot for an endorsement. So I popped that in, but then I was like, okay, no, we're getting back into the text-heavy territory here. So then I tried again. And something that you may notice is that all of these covers have a specific border pattern at the top and bottom of that text portion. And so I was like, maybe it would be a cool nod to incorporate that kind of pattern in the book cover. So I popped that in and I was like, maybe I could just put a border around the bottom or the top or put it somewhere so that, if you know that it's there, and it would be like a fun graphic visual reference. I went back to stacking the two images on top of each other. This is when I started getting closer to the final design, which if you've already seen my Instagram post revealing this won't be that big of a deal to you. There was something about it. Obviously, it still needed to be played with and fiddled with. The colors, I tried to make them match, but it didn't work the way I wanted it to. But it was closer. It was closer. And I was like, okay, I could see this maybe going somewhere. Kept fiddling with it. That's when I got the idea to do, because I didn't like the border just at the bottom, I got the idea to do corners. Maybe some corner decoration on the cover would be nice. And again, you can see the colors are off. Everything is still floating around. The spacing of the text isn't quite right. And so that's when I got the idea of a frame. But I thought, maybe I should try switching the pictures. And this was a very bad idea. But so that the shepherd figure on the bottom would be looking up at the cross and the tomb image. And that's when I was like, no, that was definitely the wrong choice. It looked better the way it was. So I flipped them back. And this is when we start getting really, really close. And then it came down to a few small things, just like font and font design. I was sticking with that all caps lettering font that is used on these. And then I was like, well, maybe I should have something a bit more swirly. Now here's a problem. And I would definitely recommend if you are planning to write a book, maybe choose shorter words for your title. My next book will have shorter words as its title, but you may have noticed from my books, the titles are not long. They're 2 words, but it's just the fact that the words themselves are so long. So it's always a struggle to get those words to fit when you have words like Jerusalem or Daughter of the Most High or Bethlehem. And you have these big long words like generations. Trying to get those to fit in a way that looks natural, not crowded, is such a conundrum. So I was trying some different fonts and some different things, and I thought, oh, maybe a swirly design, and I sent that to some people, and they were all like, nobody liked it. And so looking at it now, I'm like, I still think it looked okay, but most people preferred the solid block lettering. It felt more literary. And so I was like, okay, I agree. And that's when we kind of got to what was the closest that became the final book cover. I think I still tweaked the coloring a little bit. So then came time to pop that into the wrap, the full wrap design. And let me just pull that up. Putting together the wrap, like the cover wrap. So when you say wrap, it means the thing that goes around the whole book, including the spine and the back. Putting together the wrap is always one of my favorite parts because that's when it looks more like a book and less like a poster. So you'll see on this beautiful image of the wrap that we did get that endorsement. So shout out to Barbara M. Britton. If you don't know her or of her books, they are wonderful and amazing. She has written a couple of biblical fiction series. She has written 2 different series of biblical fiction and then a biblical fiction standalone called Defending David, and they are all very good. And this year she also came out with a devotional Bible study. So you should definitely check out Barbara, but she was kind enough to end up filling that void up at the top where I was like, an endorsement would just look perfect here. And so I will really quickly just read you what she wrote because I'm very, very thankful. She said, compelling biblical fiction stories full of adventure, love, grace, and the pursuit of a relationship with the one true God, Barbara M. Britton, award-winning author. So I'm so grateful to have that on the cover. I think it's just the perfect finishing touch. And then on the back side, I was like, I don't know how to market this. So I looked at the Lineage of Grace. I looked at the Lineage of Grace again by Francine Rivers because I felt like that was the most similar to like what I could compare to in terms of how it was formatted. And so on the back of this book, there is a short blurb for each novella in here. So I was torn on, do I write a blurb that encompasses the entire series to go on the back, like a description or summary, or do I write one small blurb for each story? So I ended up writing one small summary for each novel in the series. So this will be a collection of the 4 main novels in Generations of Faith. And you'll also notice, if you've been paying attention, down at the bottom corner, it says also includes the new Flight from Jerusalem short story. That is another interesting thing that is the product of me working on my new series and lamenting to Audrey about publishing struggles, is that in the research process and the world process for my new series, I had written a short story that takes place in between Jerusalem's daughter and Antioch's daughter, and focuses on the characters and perspectives of Shamira and Asa, because most people tell me that they are their favorite, and they're my favorite too. And I had written a short story that took place from what was going on with them and their characters in between Jerusalem's daughter and Antioch's daughter, because a lot happens. If you've read the series, you'll know. The reason I had written that story is because in the discovery process for my new series, which, like I mentioned, is a spin-off series, if you're catching my drift, I realized I needed to know where they were during that specific time period, because there is some crossover between Shamira and Asa's story and what will be my next series, and you are more than welcome to theorize about that in the comments. I cannot confirm or deny anything. I had written that short story, and whether or not you have read my new series, which obviously you haven't because it's not out yet, but because it fits between those 2 books in the Generations of Faith series, you can read it and it will add something to this series while also giving you clues and hints for my next series. And so for that reason, I was like, well, what else could make the collection special but to include that short story? Because I really wasn't sure how I was going to release that. I really had no clue. I wasn't sure if I was going to release it. I kind of just wrote it to explore and do some discovery for my new series and kind of build that world out just for me in my head. And then I was like, well, maybe when the series comes out, I could share it, or maybe I could share it now. And this just ended up being the perfect opportunity. So the collection also includes the Flight from Jerusalem short story. If you are a fan of Shamira and Asa, this is a bonus chapter. It's about 5,000 extra words of their story. after the end of Jerusalem's Daughter, in the beginning / middle of Antioch's Daughter, and it is really fun. I loved writing it. There are so many references in it. I sent it to Audrey so that she could give me like critique partner feedback on it, and she just kept pointing out, because she knows my new story, she knows what my new series is, she kept highlighting things and pointing them out and being like, this is a good reference. It fits both in this series and in this world. It expands and adds to this world, but it's also going to be kind of a foundational jumping off point for my new series. So with that being said, let me hold up for you the Generations of Faith collection. This is a beautiful book. It printed, I don't know if the camera captures it very well because it's so light, but it prints this beautiful like golden color. Again, I just think it looks so literary, so cinematic. It is roughly, if you have any like Lineage of Grace or Barnes & Noble collection type book, it is the same size. They are both 6x9. They are roughly the same width, the same cover spine width. It's just one that I ordered to test the print quality. So yeah, that is the collection with all 4 books in reading order plus the short story. I'm really excited about it. I'm hoping to share pre-order information as well soon, so look out for that. If you want to see more photos of the cover, more information like that, be sure to check me out on social media, my Instagram, Facebook, Jenna Van Mourik, all of that, as well as here on YouTube. And let me know what you think of the collection, what you think of how it looks. I'm very, very happy with it. I'm excited to bring it to you guys. I'm excited to share some exclusive content and also share something even in this season of writing and drafting a new series. So thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!